It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha, it's Feedback Friday, and I am low energy. This feedback for it's been a long week. Some people know I have an autoimmune disease, and so yes, I'm wearing a sweater in freaking August. I woke up Monday just feeling like sort of hit by a bus, and I've been feeling off all week, and I've managed to power through. But um but yesterday's video happened about Anita Sarkeesian and feminist frequency, and last time I checked, there's a lot of comments, so it's been hard to keep up with them, but people were mostly being decent, even people who are being critical, so thank you guys for that. I've been toying with maybe getting back to like doing one video a month or something like that, like, this month in gaming, and ask people to submit stories to cover that month. I don't know. Just to get back into it. But I don't know. A lot of people were like, oh, the influence is still going to be there. And I agree with you. Um, and I, I'm kind of doing things that I can be positive about, and that doesn't mean being totally uncritical. I don't think being uncritical is being positive. Like on Tuesday, I talked about, I'm streaming Tears of the Kingdom on Twitch, and I talk about the fact that the combat sucks, the crafting, like the assembly system, or whatever the fuck you call it, fuse or whatever, is halfway broken. A lot of the mechanics don't really work, but it's bigger than the sum of its parts. Like, even the story's not well laid out, but is the game fun? Yes. Despite all of that, I recommend the game. But I don't have to see past the jank to recommend the game. Because there's so little difficulty once you get past a certain number of health hearts that but if in doubt, if you're going to give it a try, rewind and, as I say, ascend in the shrine puzzles. I haven't done help support this channel yet, have I? Oh boy. Okay. I don't have the new graphic. Eileen sent me a new graphic. I haven't uploaded it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Or GoFundMe men's group in the description box below. Something is going on at Patreon. People have asked me that. I have no idea what it is. As far as I know, I have not been affected yet, but I keep checking. So, not sure. So far, so good. If that changes, I will say something. But yeah, if you're not sure about Patreon yet, there is the other two options. And about the Barbie litmus test, the comments are really interesting. I mean, if litmus tests are a red flag for you, that's fair. One of the things that I notice with a lot of the interactions I have with people about friendship and dating is that people seem to not recognize you can rule someone out. And I get it. It comes from a good place, in that people don't want to exclude people the way you've been excluded. But the thing is, it's not the way you've been excluded. It's in the way of, as one person said, just setting norms that everybody has a right to set their own boundaries. And I've been trying to think of, if somebody doesn't like a movie, it's a deal breaker. I don't know. Maybe the original Rocky. I don't know. I just think if you don't get that movie, you don't get me. But even in terms of friends, like, no. I mean, People interact with media in very different ways. They bring their own things to the table. And I've had some conversations with people who didn't like the Barbie movie. And I've said this in other videos. I agreed with every single one of their criticisms. It was a deal breaker for them. It wasn't a deal breaker for me, and that's okay. And it sucks to not like Barbie right now, the same way it sucked to not like the Avengers when I wasn't big on Whedon stuff with the Avengers. I did not like every character essentially suddenly sounding the same. And it's an issue I've had with Joss Whedon from the beginning. Yahtzee from Zero Punctuation, Ben Croshaw identified the dude can't do character voice. And that bugs me. It bugs me whenever I feel it when I experience it in a work of media where all the characters sound to the same. It's not my thing. And it will ruin things if it goes on too long. But that's my thing. Other people, if they like something, they don't care. I just think having characters sound like them is about paying respect to the character. And one of the things I've been thinking about doing in terms of content going forward is just doing little retrospectives on characters and where I think people went wrong in. But again, I don't know. I'm still mulling this stuff over. I love games. I want to do content on games. But I'm not terribly interested in being screamed at over it. And there have been a couple of comments in response to the two women talking stuff that I'm just not touching because they came in so hot that it's obviously an emotional thing. I don't have enough information to respond to it. And so I'm not quite sure what to do. And sometimes a particular piece of response, it's not like there's no appropriate format to really address the complaint. And that's a challenge because I like to address complaints made in good faith. Sometimes it just requires so much inside information, and I have to be really careful because my approach to certain things gets misunderstood, that I'll have fun with a piece of criticism and people think I'm making fun of the critic, and I'm not. I'm like, all right, here we go. Popeye, kind of thing. I'm not, it's sparring, it's jousting, it's an intellectual thing. And this is another reason I've been really hesitant to do more streams, because people get me wrong and I don't want to change that, because I enjoy a good discussion and I like having fun with concepts, and I just also want to be respectful of sensitivities, and the last thing I want is people taking pot shots at each other to appeal to each other's bases and appeal to their base. And that was something people remind me of. I'd forgotten this element of the whole feminist frequency thing. The way they called down harassment on some people while claiming to be anti-harassment. And that is, and I mean, she did it with one of my tweets. And she covered up who said it. And I thought that was just so, because when she calls out a guy, she leaves his handle. She scratched out mine, and I don't know if that's because, you can't harass a woman, or if people saw who the comment was from, they would have contextualized it differently. And I don't know which, but that I had a moment of I'd forgotten all about that. And my, if anybody's wondering, if you're new or you haven't watched a video in a time, my take on harassment is, if someone's sincerely upset, that's not harassment. There are better ways and worse ways to express that upset. And calling people names, they have the right to block you. It's amazing to me how many people comment somebody, what you said was stupid and disingenuous. And then when they get blocked, it's, I was nothing but polite. And I said, you called them stupid and disingenuous. Yes, I thought it was stupid and disingenuous. It's like, disingenuous is about their motivation. And stupid is just, people don't need to deal with that. Is that harassment? Not to me. It's somebody being a jerk. But to me, harassment is a pattern of behavior. And one person put it really well, that the first couple times someone does something, they may not know. If they continue to do it and people continue to get subjected to these rabid dog piles, at that point they're aware of what they're doing. And at that point it is inciting harassment, because it is a pattern. And if people want to do screen cap call outs, that is up to them. I have one rule about that. If you dish it out, you damn well better be prepared to take it. And so, we talked about choices this week, and, there don't tend to be, as many comments on Wellness Wednesdays, but some of the comments were interesting, going back to, norms and ideals. And so I want to touch on that for a bit, because there's a difference between the two terms, and I find they're used interchangeably. And that might be where some of the bad analysis is coming from. And again, I don't consider bad analysis personal. It's going after the work, not the person. Everybody has a clunker, and just because somebody makes a mistake doesn't mean they're a bad person. But a norm is what's considered normal. An ideal is an ideal. Now, this sounds very like, of course, but think about it. A norm is what we permit. A ideal is something we elevate. And, we get into this discussion of a normal woman or a normal guy. And that idea of what's normal varies by sub-community. And that's really important to keep in mind. Normal does not mean healthy, which is why I'm actually working, an artist of one of the It's Not Therapy team is working on a series of merchandise surrounding, we're taking all the vowels out, so it's fuck normal, but no vowels. So, cause that's where I'm at. Fuck normal. Fuck it. Fuck it. There has been a problem regarding analysis of women in media, that if a female character says something in a work, people assume the work is condoning the opinion. And I do not share that perspective. There are times, obviously, where, I mean, I had a real issue with in, WandaVision when Wanda goes, I don't need you to tell me who I am to Agatha Harkness when, the episode before or two episodes before, Agatha literally dragged her around by the hair, showing her who she was. That was a bad line. And I mean, are we supposed to believe that she's deluded? Well, and what happened with Multiverse of Madness, kind of, yeah, retroactively, maybe we did. But it was very unsatisfying because she'd learned nothing. And, I had a lot of conversation with people about how disappointing Secret Invasion was. I went in with very low very low expectations for that show. I go in Marvel and Star Wars, low expectations. The best part of Secret Invasion was the fact that the guy who plays the main Skrull bad guy is also in the Barbie movie. So I enjoyed myself watching Barbie going, he's a Skrull. But it's interesting because those used to be great in terms of common touch points that we could discuss in media, but people are dropping off more and more and more. And one person said in comments that seeing a movie with your friends that you don't necessarily like helps because you have a common language to discuss things. And I do think that one of the issues in fandom is a sort of Tower of Babel, or Babel, depending on how you pronounce it, that when different people use terms, they don't mean the same thing. And, a regular client of mine says the thing he appreciates about me is when I drop a term, I define what it means. And when we get into this idea of norms and ideals, being honest and trustworthy is an ideal. But being a lying shitbag is this where I could say slapnuts? A lying slapnuts? I don't know. I'm still trying to work this term into my vocabulary. But, being dishonest and petty, that's a norm. We accept that. We expect that from people to the point that we blame the victim of the falsehoods. And there are so many people walking around afraid to trust because we put the burden on that exchange of the person who was fooled by the lie instead of the person who told the lie. And I don't accept that, even though I recognize that as a norm in society, yes, we are normalizing lying and grift. And, a lot of that is the particular contours of the First Amendment in the US bleeding into the rest of the world. The fact that in the Trump indictment, they have to say, yes, he has the First Amendment right to lie about the results of the election. And it's like, what happened to fighting words? Like, if you can reasonably predict people are going to riot because you said something, and I guess that's the whole argument, propping up the indictment is this is not protected speech. He has the right to lie, except there was a conspiracy. And I'm like, oh man, like there are certain, like, I accept that it's legal in the US to lie about things. And yet, if you defame somebody, you have to sue. That's messed up, because that means only the people with money can afford to protect their reputations. And so you've got people like J.K. Rowling suing, people she knows doesn't have the money because they popped off in a tweet. And at this point, I don't know how she'd be able to prove that tweet damaged her reputation as opposed to her own shameful ass behavior. And again, my issue with J.K. Rowling is what I said. If you dish it out, be prepared to take it. And she can't. She labeled me a fucking pedophile apologist in a sneaky ass way. And she can't take it. And that's one of the things about me. If somebody's got a weird ass idea, I don't terribly care. I have weird ass ideas, you know? When someone is a deceitful hypocrite, then we got a problem. But being a deceitful hypocrite has become a norm. You have to say the right things so you don't get canceled, right? You have to say, I do not support harassment against women. Even as the people who mouth that language are participating in it and they don't see how. And, you know, maintaining rigid sexual morality norms is one way it happens. Because as one commenter said, you know, it's all well and good to say men are not defined by how much sex they have, but as long as incel is an insult, we're normalizing making that, you know, a standard of a man's worth. And I don't like that. You know, I got called a femcel by Hassan Piker, who claims to be a leftist. I don't know why there's such a blind spot on the left regarding this stuff. That cheap insult is not worth the stereotypes and bad stuff that it's perpetuating, when you can learn lovely terms like slap nuts that are so much more fun, you know, and evocative. You know, like, I would rather do creative swears than this bullshit nudge wink, like, oh no, it's about the attitudes. No, it's not. The word means involuntary celibate. Words fucking mean things. Stop this, you know? It's interesting because on It's Not Therapy this week, I interviewed a men's expert, a guy that works with men. You can check out Jeff Pereira at higherunlearning.com. And Jeff, we went out to talk about brackets, male ego. We're doing imposter syndrome, so I made sure it wasn't just men, it wasn't just women, it was week to week, balanced out. And Jeff said, you know, he doesn't use the terms toxic masculinity, things like that, because if his intention is to get in and to establish trust with the people he's working with, that's not serving that intention when you put them on your guard with terms that they associate, you know, have bad experiences with or interpret in a way that isn't helpful. And he had an interesting idea of, because one of the things I thought it was important to get out is intentions do matter. And he had this really interesting comment that you have to act, I'm paraphrasing here, you have to act in accordance with your intention. So if you don't intend to upset someone and someone gets upset, you know, it's, whoa, what happened there? I did not mean to upset anybody. You don't just keep going, knowing someone's upset, seeing the bad reaction, charging forward. You are deliberately ignoring feedback when you take that approach. So it's harder to believe that your intention really was not to upset or offend, you know, when you're ignoring that feedback. And that's where I think the left goes wrong in a lot of its messaging, and the right is just nudge wink. Oh yeah, we just care about kids. You know, meanwhile, pastors are abusing kids left and right. And I say this as somebody who's a dear friend of mine is a pastor. And that's part of the reason it makes me so angry. His job is harder and the whole concept sickens him, right? He just happens to share the same profession. And I don't know how people who see what's happening in the various churches can blame any other group for child abuse. That's one of those things. But the left has this thing of intentions don't matter, only outcomes. And then and I don't believe this, by the way, I don't. But then when it comes to, you know, an outcome where people get really upset, if you had no intention of provoking that much, have a conversation like I do. The whole purpose of Feedback Friday is for me to come out and do a recap and respond to good faith criticism and, accept compliments too. And when the most important thing I really like doing, because I appreciate it so greatly, is, like I said with the feminist frequency video, like, the comments were fair. Even the people who are definitely not fans of hers, they kept the criticism in bounds. And based on the strong feelings I know are out there, and you might notice I named the video because a lot of you guys found this channel because I did a series back in the day called How Anita Sarkeesian Almost Made Me Quit Writing About Video Games, or How Feminist Frequency, I don't remember which it was, but so the video today was Feminist Frequency Quit, I'm Still Writing. And I'll admit that is kind of a sit there and take stock kind of moment. Because, they are a really big reason that I was, that group was a really big reason that I was ostracized from major gaming circles. People knew that, people like that didn't like me. So they avoided me so as not to offend them. And that's a choice. And this is what I mean about bullying being systemic. That wouldn't work if the game devs went, fuck you, I'm going to talk to who I'm going to talk to. I think she has some good points too. Now, let's face it, certain game devs think I'm a raging bitch and wish I would just shut my mouth because I make sense, but in a way that makes them uncomfortable. And if they listen to what I had to say, they may have to actually address the benevolent sexism they actually hold in their minds and hearts. Instead, make the sexy women go away is a really easy way of sweeping it under the rug. I'm well aware of that. I know I'm never going to get an apology for that. I know a lot of these devs won't admit that. But don't piss in my ear and tell me it's raining. Slap nuts. Did I use that right? I'm working on this word. I love the word slap nuts. But I just decided when it got really mental that, I'm making my own game. I'm doing the mental health stuff. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished together in terms of giving people assistance in healing. Because I do think that underlying all the fighting about games, that's what it's really about. It's about people not feeling heard and validated. And everybody needs to feel heard and validated. And there are things you can validate in a person even when they're behaving badly. And this is what the sort of nerd media keeps failing on. Maybe there's a series in this, but I get why people have issues with change. I would much rather people just say, I liked it the way it was. You changed it. I'm not great with the change. Than trying to make it a woke conspiracy, right? There's just no evidence that there is any pressure that the studios are listening to. Trust me, They're not listening to the shrieking people. They're looking at their numbers and noticing who's watching. And Black and Hispanic women are driving streaming media. That's what's going on, not the hootin' and hollerin'. And just, that's why I'm so big on I feel versus I think. You know, this is, if something just hits you wrong, like there's certain things in shows, they just hit me wrong. And I'm like, why? And I'll sit on it and I'll think about it and come to a conclusion. And sometimes I'll say, I have an artistic or a creative quibble with this. Other times I'll say it just, you know, take the Disney Plus Loki show. You don't get redeemed through torture. It doesn't matter how much you torture a person. You torture a bad person, they're still a bad person. It's not, oh, torture them until we feel sorry for them and then we excuse all of the past bad behavior. No, they actually have to make changes. And the things they did before are still wrong. And torturing a guy through a bad memory is not funny. Especially when this is a series where the guy comes out as at minimum bisexual and it's about cutting a girl's hair. For people who don't know, gay guys can torment women like that because it's this complicated thing. So, hey, this gay-coded behavior, oh, let's torture him forever. Oh, but the TVA is bad people. Yes, but if that were a female character and they did it, the wokenati would be up in arms about it. And yes, I just used woke as a pejorative. That was a joke because I'm frustrated. But you cannot torture a woman for an understandable behavior rated, related to being deeply in the closet and have people go, yay! You don't get points for inclusion when you do that. That's something I will argue. The fact that Sylvie just pissed me off from about episode 3 onward, no, that's just a personal thing. And we need to be able to do this with media. We need to be able to say just, I didn't like it. Because a lot of it is about the expectations you go in with. If you are super stoked for something, if you have been looking forward to it for years and years and years, watching every clip, consuming every interview, just obsessive fanning it, and it's not the greatest thing you've seen this year, of course you're going to be disappointed. If you just go in going, I want to see a movie, I'm going to see this movie, and it gives you a few chuckles, very different. Expectation, outcome versus expectation, outcome. It's the same outcome, but it's weighted against your expectations. And I do think that so many people are just hanging on for bits of happy. And whether you think they should or not doesn't matter. The people writing about this media, you're supposed to be an expert in not just the media itself, but the culture surrounding the media. And if you are a pop culture critic claiming to have a fandom expertise and you're not factoring that in to your analysis, you're gonna end up with false positives. You're gonna come to wrong conclusions. You're ignoring data. And I see a lot of people ignoring data. And you know me, I like data. That pisses me off. And I do want to have conversations about how we can have better conversations. And it's interesting, and I'll leave you with this, something to think on, something to brainstorm together. I've been trying to get back into streams, and somebody said, you should go on this stream. Oh, they're active on Discord or whatever. I'll reach out and I'll hear nothing. And I'm like, you know what? Just based on professional courtesy, write back and say no, motherfucker. Slap nuts. But okay, their choice. If they're that unprofessional, don't want to go on the stream anyway. But then there are others I see kind of feeling me out and commenting on tweets and things like that, but they don't have the conversation. There have to be ground rules for these things. There have to be ground rules for everything. Boundaries are important. Boundaries are good for everyone. Nobody in their right mind just goes on a stream without a discussion of what the topic parameters are and what the ground rules are. That's just crazy, you know? And I had an experience not long ago where somebody invited me on their stream and I went through, it was like 10 tweets. And there was a retweet where somebody was misgendered. And I said, I saw this. Is that going to happen on the stream? And the guy got instantly defensive. And it's like, I just asked a question. I'm not attacking you, for the tweet. I just want to know, will this happen? Because if not, okay, I don't care what you do on your Twitter feed. If yes, well, no, I'm sorry, I can't participate because I have trans clients and trans people who watch my content, and I want them to be able to watch things I'm a part of without feeling punched in the gut. That's not a political position. That's a consideration for people position. That's a litmus test for me. If you can, if people seem aware of reality and, yeah, okay, yeah, that was misgendering, but no, I understand. I won't do it with you. They've given their word there. If they break their word, then they've broken their word. If they can't agree to that, I have my answer. And there's no good dialogue that can happen if people aren't being honest and authentic with each other. Give people like that's a manipulation, right? And I know people don't like hearing things are manipulations, but they are. When you are not answering a yes or no question, because if you give an honest answer, someone may say no, that's manipulative. You have to give the people all the answers, all the information, so they can make an informed choice. And you have to be able, if you really want someone in your stream, if you think it's beneficial, rules of engagement for that person. Next week, you can go right back to doing whatever you want. But respect your guest. I do that. And if, I can't meet an accommodation on a guest, for instance, I will give the general type of questions I'll be asking because they may have to pull statistics. I will not give a guest the exact questions. It's been a thing since my journalist days where what they end up doing, it ends up being a bad interview because if you agree these are the only questions you're going to ask, you can't do follow-ups, and it leads to a very stilted exchange. I'm organic. I like my follow-ups. I like to drill down. It's not a good fit. And it's not a good fit as real. So I'll leave it there. Really interested in topics you guys would see interested going forward. Whether you'd like periodic women's issues, I don't know. I don't know. We do two women talking, but something about gaming. I don't know. Let me know. We can brainstorm. This is a community. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for somebody who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Preferred for now, either coffee or the men's group. Because patrons being a bit weird. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.